Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bourbon Bytes podcast. Not the podcast. Wow, I'm still in podcast mode. Just a new episode came out today. Welcome to Bourbon Bytes, whiskey reviews with a gaming twist. I'm your host, Clifton. Thank you all for tuning in this wonderful Thursday evening, whether you're watching live or watching the replay. Glad to have you here. We have a very awesome guest coming up today that I'm so excited to bring on. It's a brand I've heard a lot about, but haven't had the chance to try very much of. So looking forward to going through a flight of whiskeys from them. But first of all, welcome to everyone in the chat. I see Tony, Todd, and Alfonso showing up already. Good to see y'all. Thank y'all for showing up tonight for the stream. Of course, I know more people are going to come in. Of course, Doug from Taste and Sensibility wants to get the notification. By the way, I assume those of you here are subscribed, but if you're not, you hit the notification bell down below to be notified every time I go live. So that way, that's what you can be the early crew that shows up here. But yes, tonight we have a very special guest coming to us from Tennessee, but he has a Kentucky background. So I don't know if he's in Tennessee or Kentucky. I'll ask him. But he comes from Kentucky, and he has a great amount of experience that he's bringing to Nelson Greenbrier Distillery. So please welcome our very special guest, head distiller of Nelson Greenbrier, as well as head distiller of Copper and Kings Distillery. Please welcome to the show, Brandon O'Daniel. Welcome, Brandon.
How's it going, sir? Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for volunteering to come on. I know I reached out to the distillery, and you guys were really quick to respond and really quick to set in a date. So I appreciate that so much. And I always love having guests on the channel, especially from distilleries that are outside of Kentucky, because we see a lot of Kentucky distilleries, but it's so fun to see a Tennessee distillery. So welcome.
Awesome. No, again, thanks for having me. Super proud to be part of the Nelson's team and to get the opportunity to chat about it with you guys and walk through some good tasting whiskeys.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it too. Well, before we get into the Nelsons of it all, tell us a little about yourself, your story and how you got into distilling and, got your journey up to now.
Yep. So Kentucky boy, born and raised, still in the state at the moment. But from an early age, fell in love with plants. Went to college and got a bachelor's degree in horticulture. Was planning on going out west. And then a few things in life happened and really ultimately fell in love with the grapevine in the weirdest of places in the state of Kentucky. And decided to give up my chase for the West Coast life and stayed in Kentucky and started making alcohol. Became a winemaker, then eventually turned into a brandy maker, and now these days I'm making Tennessee whiskey.
And that's quite a journey. So what about the East Coast kind of kept you there? Like you said, you wanted to kind of go out to the West Coast, but was it the people? Was it the environment? We were talking a little bit about the weather earlier. What was it that kept you there?
I think it was the atmosphere. I think it was family. And really, I think it was the artistic side of things, especially when it came to winemaking. California winemaking is big business. And grape growing is definitely big business as well. But the one thing you guys really have over us, especially, is consistent weather. Where Kentucky, we are up and down, up and down. It's either hot, cold, humid, dry. It's always something. So the artistic aspect, the challenge of making world-class wines in a state that's not necessarily known for it. We were actually, though, the very first commercial vineyard in the United States. Wow. So, it actually had a really rich but very quick history in viticulture and then kind of got forgotten about. And ultimately, if I'm being perfectly honest, right place, right time. And somebody said, "Hey, you want a job?" And I was like, "Yes, sir, I do."
I feel that. That's awesome. Yeah. So Alfonso in the chat says wine, brandy, whiskey. That's a journey. Yeah. So, was it kind of did you always know you wanted to get into wine, as a starting point, or what inspired you to get into wine originally?
So family's kind of always been in the alcohol business. Great-great-grandfather was, grew up pre-Prohibition and was a bit of a bootlegger. My grandfather started one of the first wineries since Prohibition back in the state of Kentucky. So kind of always around it. But again, a huge plant guy. And then my senior year for my horticulture degree, I had to go out and write a paper on a agricultural style business. My cousin had just moved back to the state and was starting a small little vineyard consulting firm. And I thought, man, I'm going to go out there for a week or two. We're going to hang out, drink some beer, get to know each other again, and then off to the races I go. And after about 4 days of sitting in that vineyard, tying up grapevines and looking at it, I was like, man, there's something about this. So it was ultimately the vine, and that's kind of what got me into it. And then because I decided to stay in Kentucky, it was not necessarily economically feasible for me just to grow grapes. I had to turn that into alcohol as well. So then I got to messing with that and realized I had a bit of a palate and a bit of a knack for it. So one thing led to the other, and like I said, somebody offered me a job.
Well, that's such an interesting like story, and just even the journey from there to where you are now is incredible. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but I also want to talk about the brand Nelson's Greenbrier. I was looking into their history, and it's a really fascinating story. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that, or I'm also happy to whatever that makes the most
Of course.
sense.
Now, in my opinion, it is one of, if not the best stories in American whiskey out there. It is absolutely wild, and it's really a representation of the American citizen, the American immigrant, and how America became the country it is now. So, 1850, there's this 15-year-old kid, Charles Nelson. He is in Germany with his 5 brothers and sisters and his mom and dad. Dad gets the wild hair up his ass to sell the candle making company they have in Germany and move to America. So at that point, in order not to be robbed, you basically would convert all of your money into gold. And then a lot of these people were having these custom suits made, and the gold was sewn inside. So that's what Charles's dad did. So he gets all of his money put in this suit. They hop on this cruise line boat over to America. They get about 3/4 of the way through, and the boat breaks down. The rudder, cracks, and they're shipwrecked there for a little bit. And they sit in these rough waters for about 3 days. Well, eventually another ship rolls in, and they start unloading all the passengers onto this new freight liner. John Nelson, Charles's dad, being a husband and a father and just a good guy, is one of the last people on this ship. And he gets on the last lifeboat, and this rogue wave hits the lifeboat and flips it. And of course, he's carrying all this gold, so he sinks to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And there since 15-year-old Charles Nelson with his 5 brothers and sisters and his mom on the other ship, they just watched their dad sink to the bottom of the ocean with every single penny they had to their name. They don't speak a lick of English, and they're about maybe 2 weeks away from hitting Long Island there in New York. So they continue to hit the journey. They land in New York. They hang out for about 2 years there. Charles and his brothers get back to doing what they know what to do best. They start making candles and wax and stuff like that. They gain some money. And then he eventually moves the family out west, which at that point was Cincinnati. They hang out there for a few years, and he gets into the grocery business and the butcher business. Now, at that point in the world, the grocery business was the hub of everything. So you bought whiskey there, you bought and sold fruit and vegetables there, everything. So Charles starts to make a lot of contacts and gets into the whiskey business to some degree, at least in the selling of it and the kind of how it gets, processed and things on that nature. So eventually he moves down to Nashville, where he starts a grocery store, and he also starts selling whiskey. Well, he ends up finding out that he can't do both because both of them are taken off. So he sells the grocery store, and it turns into a relatively large local business there in Nashville with a few stores still running. And then he buys a small distillery right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, called in Greenbrier. He goes in there, modernizes the place, and turns it into one of the biggest distilleries pre-prohibition. In I'll give my year real quick. 1885, this guy's selling 380,000 gallons of whiskey. I mean, that's quite a bit of spirits.
That's crazy, especially for that. I mean, that amount in that time, like it's even hard to fathom, even like today. Like that's crazy.
It's a super brand all over the world. So Distillery takes off. And then in 1891, Charles dies. He gets sick and dies really quick. And he leaves everything to his wife, Louisa. Now, at this point, women are not allowed to vote. They're not allowed to own property. And Tennessee is really a hotbed for the suffrage movement and the temperance movement. I mean, they're burning down distilleries. They're crashing in warehouses. It's wild. Tennessee whiskey history is lost, but way kind of the Wild West as far as whiskey goes. So anyways, Louisa's navigating through this. And because of Tennessee, the way it is, they actually go into state prohibition a little over 10 years before federal prohibition. Now, there's a few loopholes to where Louisa can actually take her whiskey, send it up to Kentucky, and then sell it in Kentucky and get rid of all of her stuff, which is exactly what she does. And then once all of the stock is gone, federal prohibition has hit, the distillery kind of disappears into history and everything is forgotten. And at that point, super cool story, super cool distillery. What more could you ask for? Well, in 2006, there are two young brothers, native Nashvillians, that have been out in LA in college, and they've come home for the holidays. And their dad says, hey, let's go get in the car. We're going up to Greenbrier to this butcher. I bought a side of beef, and, we're going to have that for the holidays. So the boys get in the car, and they ride up there. It's about 30 or 45 minutes outside of Nashville. They pull into the parking lot across the road from the butcher shop, and they see one of those great big historical signs that you see all across the countryside. Mm-hmm. And it's got Charles Nelson's name on it and the description of this distillery where they just happen to be sitting on the grounds of. Well, the brothers, as they describe it, their hair stands up on the back of the neck and they look at each other going, what the hell? This just feels weird. So they get to poking around and come to find out they are the lost great-great-great-great-grandchildren of Charles Nelson. And the family, because of where they were in the time it wasn't really something they talked about. So the brothers really hardly knew anything about it other than maybe a couple rumblings at Christmas and stuff about it. One time there may have been a distillery in the family. So they get to poking around and find all of these articles. One of the article actually describes to a T the original mash bill, the cook times, everything out of this paper in New York. So once the brothers have that, they get really excited and decide to open up the distillery. And here we sit.
Wow. That was such an incredible story. You told it way better than I could have, so I appreciate you taking that on. I see people in the chat. Yeah. Todd says, now that's how you do a family tree. And then a few other people saying hello. Matthew Park says, wow, great story. Doug said he's looking at my 5-year-old Nelson's Greenbrier sour mash, and I have toured Copper and Kings in Louisville. Nice. I also see some few folks showing up. Josh, Cindy, Aaron, some new faces and some familiar faces. So thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. This is going to be a fun one. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get something poured before we take a talk or turn to talking about Tennessee whiskey as a category. We have the backstory. We know that Nelson's was making huge amounts of it back in the 1880s. But I would love to know your thoughts on, everyone has their opinions on what makes something a Tennessee whiskey versus a bourbon. Where do you fall in that conversation?
All right. So here's the rule. Basically, a Tennessee whiskey, it has all the same requirements as a bourbon, except for two more. A, it must be made in Tennessee. Kentucky kind of messed that up when we let bourbon become a U.S. spirit, but that's a whole different podcast. And then 2, it must be filtered through maple charcoal. And that really makes such a huge difference in the way, especially the clear spirit comes off or goes into the barrel, because we basically distill it, run it through the maple charcoal, and then barrel it. It makes a huge difference. You can smell the difference, taste the difference, but I can also feel the difference in between my fingers, pre-charcoal and post-charcoal. It just kind of really smooths it out and just kind of pulls out some of those harsher compounds that are kind of left, especially in that clean, clear spirit.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, totally. That's I feel the same way. I don't know, it's not really a hot topic anymore. It used to be more of a hot topic when people were saying is it bourbon? But I think we all kind of are aligned on that same thing now. I just poured myself a glass of the Nelson's Greenbrier. This is the Tennessee handmade sour mash whiskey. I believe this is just the flagship Tennessee whiskey you guys make. Can you tell us a little bit about this one and just what makes this bottle unique?
Yes. So back to the story of the brothers. They are sitting at the roadside. They see their name on the historical marker. They get to asking around, and the butcher says, hey, there is an actual little museum about Greenbrier down the road. You guys should go check it out. They may know something a little bit more about the story. So they go in, they tell the lady who they are, and her eyes kind of open up. And she's, oh man, I've got a whole room designated just to the Nelson's Greenbrier Distillery. So they walk in and sits an empty bottle that looks 99.9% just like this one. Label, style, everything. And it is original label and original bottle from the distillery. So the brothers get that idea and they recreate the label on the bottle close as we can with KTB regulations. And then it goes back to, they start poking around the newspaper like we were talking about earlier. And the original recipe, this is what that is. They found this recipe in the newspaper and we have recreated. So this is a 4-day sour mash. It is a wheated whiskey. It's coming in at 91 proof. You're looking at about 70% corn, and about 16% wheat. And then the rest is malted barley. Average age on this is bouncing right around 4 to 5 years.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I agree what you said earlier about, the mellowing kind of really does, I don't want to say change the profile, but like you said, it kind of mellows it out, kind of brings out more of the sweeter characteristics. There's a great question in the chat from Matthew. He said he didn't even think about the charcoal being from different types of wood. What makes the maple charcoal different from others?
Cool, man, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I think politics may have had a little bit to do with that. And then I also feel like just the maple itself, the consistency, the tylose, and how tight that is in the maple. When you char it, it kind of opens it up just enough to where it allows it to kind of be a little bit more porous and pour through there instead of getting stuck. But now I'd say, to be perfectly honest with you, there's probably all kinds of opinions on why we use char instead of something else.
Yeah, I've never even thought about that question. It's a great question. You guys feel free to chime in with any questions you have along the way. Happy to throw them out there in the conversation. I like this one. I think it's a very approachable, easygoing Tennessee whiskey that's different than any other Tennessee whiskey I've had. I mean, it doesn't have, there are flavors that I thought that I associated with that charcoal mellowing that I get on other Tennessee whiskeys that aren't quite here. This to me is more in line with what I see from more bourbons that are outside of Tennessee. Is there a certain flavor profile that you think Nelson's Greenbrier is kind of going for here? Is there something they're looking for specifically that they want this flagship Tennessee whiskey to have?
I think they're looking for that spice. You get that 16% rye. That's a little bit of rye in there, and I think that kind of adds a little bit of the backbone, especially after you do the charcoal mellowing. This sits for a little bit shorter time than a lot of other bourbons, so it's got a little bit more umph on the back. And we kind of like that. We want a whiskey that's going to stand up and say, hey, man, that's a Greenbrier whiskey. When you pour it blind or you have it in a cocktail, it's our flagship. It's our signature. It's our fingerprint, so to speak. So we are very, very proud that it does stand out.
That's awesome. So we talked a little bit about your background, coming from the wine industry to the brandy industry to whiskey. How was the transition from coming from a brandy distillery? Because I toured the Copper and Kings Distillery. It's been several years now, back in 2018. So it's been a while, but absolutely loved it when I was up in Kentucky. I wanted to try something different. And the brandy that they're producing is incredible. Am I correct that you're still the head distiller, master distiller there?
No, so that has actually recently changed. So
okay.
A Constellation came in and bought Copper and Kings in 2018, and then fully acquired them in 2020. And then they just sold Copper and Kings in August.
Okay.
I'm necessarily part of that deal. So Copper and Kings went one direction and I went the other.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry. I apologize about that.
No, you're good.
But I know you were with them for a very long time. And, like that distillery really does stand out in my mind because they're doing something different. They're doing, Kentucky style, but brandy. What has the journey been like going from brandy to whiskey, especially when you are in a state or you're from a state that is so whiskey focused? I'm just curious, like what that journey was like for you.
That's a really good question. So the brandy, be perfectly honest with you, when you're a brandy maker, nobody really cares what you're doing. They're just impressed you're doing something different, but there's not near as many eyes or rules and regulations in the brandy world. I was kind of free to kind of come and go as I please, so to speak, and really create. When you get in the whiskey world, it's a little more limiting. You've got to use New American Oak barrels. You've got to at least be 51% corn. There's a way bigger fan base, especially here in the country. But what brandy really taught me, what I really appreciate, and really it goes back to Kentucky winemaking, is a freedom to like create something in an environment where no one was expecting anything from you. So it was easy to step in and be like, well, if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And I'm not going to get in trouble. We're just trying to find things out. And I've kind of always had the approach of just like, I learn way more from failing than I do from succeeding. And I've always got a question in my head. Well, what if? So the brandy game really kind of gave me, I was a brandy maker for 11 years. Absolutely loved it. Copper and Kings was my baby. I was the very first distiller there. And all those have been my creation up until August. And it has taught me so much. But the whiskey world coming into it, man, that feels like I've kind of stepped up a little bit into the big dogs game just a pinch. And then it's kind of really allowed me to be like, wait a minute, guys, maybe we should try this and maybe we should try that, because I've got that creative background and I've tried so many different things in the brandy world that it's allowed me, especially barrel finishes, fermentation styles, temperature regulations in the cellar, all kinds of stuff. And a lot of that, honestly, is really, really transferable to the whiskey world. So in my opinion, whiskey is a much harsher, tighter spirit. It'll take way more of a punch than a brandy. So if you can caress the brandy into a style that you want, the whiskey tends to go in much easier.
Very well put. I will say, yeah, that's a great concept. I mean, I always thought of Copper and Kings as a bit of like the hipster in the world. Like they were like doing like weird stuff that no one else was doing, and like all the different barrel finishes. I know you guys collaborated with so many different breweries. I remember there were like certain releases that were tied with the brewery or used their beer barrel to age it. So I know finishing is like catching on so much in the whiskey world, which we're going to try one of your cask finish series here shortly. But I think what is if you had to pick a finishing cask that you think maybe for brandy and whiskey, let's talk. What do you think does the best as a finishing cask? Do you have a favorite?
So I'm a wine guy, man.
Okay.
I like a good wine finish. And then I also like a really like heavy beer finish. So like a good something super funky and dark. I find those two make really remarkable finishes both in whiskey and in brandy. With brandy, I also kind of lean a little more towards a clear spirit or a lighter spirit, not necessarily clear, but a lighter like a tequila. I find that goes a really nice finish as well. And then for my whiskeys, I kind of go a little bit richer in the rum style, the sherry note, thing along that nature. But a lot of them are very interchangeable. A lot of you just got to kind of sit down, taste the whiskey, taste what was in the barrel, and then have some idea where you want to go in 4 to 5 years. And if you kind of have those puzzle pieces, for the most part, you can put it together.
Gotcha. Yeah, very true. And there are a couple questions. If I missed your question, please feel free to repost it. I'm trying to get caught up, make sure I'm not leaving people behind. But yeah, we'll get a little bit into the finishing in a second. But I do want to move on to this next one we have here. This is the Nelson Bros whiskey. This is the reserve bourbon. Can you tell us a little bit about this one? I know this one, it says it's a blend of straight bourbon whiskeys coming in at 107.8 proof. Yeah, tell us about this one.
Yep. So this is kind of our pour it neat over rocks kind of bourbon. It is absolutely a delicious spirit. We're kind of bouncing in that 6 to 8 year mark on our average age, but we have stuff as old as 15 years in that.
Wow.
This is a blend of own make and source whiskeys. And then, so you're basically on average, though, you're a little bit lower in corn. One of the mash bills for this one only has 60% corn in it, 36% rye, and then 4% malted barley. So again, a little bit of that rye spice, but a little bit sweet on the front note because of the corn.
Awesome. Are you able to say like what states it's from at all? For the use, of course, there's Tennessee whiskey in there, but are you able to say the states?
I'm not sure if I'm able to say
Okay.
it. We will. So I mean, you're looking at Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee. All the there's a few in there that you can for sure assume are what they are. And then there's a couple in there though that would be some surprises as well. So
Gotcha.
I've always been one to like be able to pick as many paint colors as possible and to blend. I love blending. And
Mm.
I also find that even if I'm making the same spirit at my place with the exact same ingredients, but as my neighbor down the road, his spirit or their spirit's going to taste different than mine. And I like being able to collect as many different types as possible to kind of bring in and really create something unique, and a lot harder to replicate.
Absolutely. I think that's something that's kind of catching on in the industry is like blending is just as, if not, potentially more important than, distilling itself, because distilling, you're setting a whiskey up for success. But as a blender, that's when you're knowing like when it's ready, two, what it can, let's say it's spiking in this direction of flavor. We need to mellow it out with some of this. I think that's such a craft in itself. And the fact that you're doing both is pretty incredible. So
Oh,
cheers to
it's
you for
so
that.
much fun. I love going into the cellar, especially on rainy afternoons with the drill and a couple glasses and some buddies. That is where the magic happens. We sit around the pot and we talk about where we want this whiskey to be in 5, 6, 10 years. And then we kind of forget about it and we kind of let it sit for a while. So when it's time to actually go back and rub on it a little bit and see where she is, it's just like opening a Christmas present. It's just so exciting. And no matter, I'm celebrating my 21st year, going on my 21st years with booze, paying the bills. And I am just as excited today to drill into a barrel as I was the very first time.
That's that. Yeah, you got to have that passion, because I feel like if you lose the passion, then it's like you're not putting your all into it. So I'm glad to hear that still, after so long, you're still feeling that way. That's incredible. I do want to get to a couple questions that were earlier in the chat. Someone was saying some people compare the charcoal filtering to the non-chill filtering process. Do you see them as similar, or do you see them as like one over the other? I know non-chill filtering gets a bad rap in the whiskey industry. I think maybe some people that may not be as familiar with Tennessee whiskey may see that. Like, is the charcoal mellowing kind of like pulling out flavors that should be there? So I'm curious your thoughts and just your opinion on that.
No, I'm not going to say the charcoal melting is pulling out flavors that should be in there. I feel like the charcoal mellowing changes the consistency a little bit and adds a little more complexity, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. It allows us as a Tennessee distillery to kind of stand out from anyone else in the world. You cannot get Tennessee whiskey from anywhere else in Tennessee. Now, we also do this before it goes into the barrel. Non-chill filtering, however, is kind of at the end of the process. I'm a big non-chill filter fan. I spend so much time in the fields growing the grain, in the winery or in the fermentation tanks, at the distillery around the pots, and then putting it in the barrels. That I don't want to strip out anything. I want as much complexity in there as possible so that you can taste everything that I tasted throughout all the years. So that's kind of my MO. I want it as much in there as possible. So anything that I can find to add a little bit of extra is perfectly fine with me.
That makes total sense. I'm just tasting again the reserve bourbon. This is my style of whiskey. I really love everything about this. I love that it's higher proof. Is this at cask strength, or is it a specific proof that's kind of improved down to it? Just curious.
No, this is not at cask strength.
Okay, gotcha. Was there a reason that you guys decided on doing it at the 107.8? Is there like a significance with that number, or is it just where it tasted right?
Where it tasted right. We are all
Okay.
about making sure that the whiskey is representing itself to the best of its ability, whether that be at 100 proof or 120 proof, whatever it may be. I don't necessarily can care what the proof is. I just want to make sure that myself and the team around me are all satisfied with where it needs to be.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, I think this drinks so nicely. I'm drinking it neat, but I think with that proof, it would hold up over ice as well. So I think however you want to enjoy this, that's just a really delicious. You can tell there's some aged product in it. I think it's coming across to me. It's like you can tell that like there's some older backbone here, and it's really elevating the whiskey. But still, it's not over oaky where it's replacing those sweeter notes from like maybe the younger whiskey. I don't know. I'm a big fan of the flavor profile of this one. It's very well done.
No, you can still, you can tell that it's been sitting around for a while, and it's an adult whiskey. But again, I really, really like to focus on, what the distiller was tasting the day that it was made and what the blender, tasted as the components went throughout all the barrels. So being able to kind of layer those and then to be able to pick them out as a consumer, I feel like that's successful bottle.
Definitely. I want to get to a couple more questions here. Well, first of all, Tony's making a comment that our last names are pretty similar. I'm assuming Irish background.
Yes, for sure. Yep.
Same here. Maybe we're related in some long distant.
Very good possibility.
For sure. Well, yeah, that's funny. Actually, I didn't notice it until I was making this graphic, and I was like, oh wait, that's very similar. There's another question. Emmett Otter, also welcome. First time seeing in the chat. Was there anything left at the old distillery in Greenbrier? That's a good question.
No. So, well, I mean, not as far as whiskey wise goes. The spring was still there. And then there was a little bit of the actual barrel warehouse was still erect as well.
Gotcha. So none of the equipment or anything like that was still, but I mean, luckily, they, like you said, they had the recipe, which is incredible that they were able to have that.
Crazy fluke. So the story behind that, Charles was actually gone one day. And because he had made such a beautiful distillery, word had kind of gotten out of, it was such a cool place to visit. People actually started showing up. And this was before tours or anything. So he was one of the first distilleries to actually start bringing in, start doing tours. So anyways, he was gone running a load of whiskey, and journalist from New York comes down and he runs into the head distiller. And like most head distillers, we like to chit chat and shoot the shit and basically tell you everything we know, especially about the stuff we're doing, because we're so proud and happy about it. So this journalist asks for a tour, and the head distiller takes him through and writes down, tells him everything, tells him temperature, mash bills, everything. And because of that, we're able to recreate such a beautiful, authentic whiskey.
Definitely. I think what I'm curious to know, like you just recently came to Nelson Greenbrier in November of 2024. So you've just hit a year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What are you hoping to bring to it, like from your unique background? Like what is your goal for the future of whiskey here?
So they're making delicious whiskeys. There is no doubt about it. And they've been a great brand since day one. My goal really in general is to kind of come in, create a sense of ease, and then to also make sure that we are consistently creating the quality whiskey that they are known for. I'm not trying to change the wheel whatsoever. I'm just trying to make sure that we are as efficient and as quality focused as possible. And that's kind of my main goal. I am just here to support the team that's running that place and really allow them to shine to their fullest.
It's almost full circle how Charles Nelson came into the distillery to do the same. You're kind of going into it and, doing the same thing, making it efficient, kind of improving what's already working really well for them. So that's really cool. And there's just some comments from the chat about blenders. Adam says, the great blenders will always rank higher for me than those folks just throwing single barrels on the shelf. Takes a lot more skill than just sampling and saying, yeah, this is a banger. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So like when you're making something like this reserve bourbon, what do you, is there a specific flavor profile you look for when you're doing the blends? I don't know if you've had a chance to do one of these blends yet, but I'm just curious if there's like a flavor profile that you think, yes, that's exactly what I want my bourbon to be.
So basically the way that we decide to do these is we actually sit down and bring a team, anywhere from 3 to 8 people. We will taste our original blend, go back anywhere from 2 to 3 years, and then start tasting all the components. And then I'm really more interested in the quality of the components than anything. I want to make sure that the single barrels are exactly where I want them to be. We start cataloging them and writing down all their different tasting notes. And then at that point, we kind of go back, sit down as a group and like, all right, the reserve bourbon, it has notes of honey and almond and pecans or whatever it may be. And then we try to figure all those out from those single individual barrels and then recreate that aspect from there. But being able to recreate a specific flavor profile, time in and time out, that's where the real mastery comes into. That is the hardest part. Budweiser, and Bud Light, it may not be your favorite beer, but man, it always tastes exactly the same. And those brewers being able to do that exactly the same every single time, man, that's magic. And that's straight skill. And that's what we are really striving to do as well at Nelson's. The teams that I've got there is absolutely amazing. You walk in, everybody's crazy happy to be there. You can feel it in the air. You can taste it in the whiskey. And it just makes my job so much easier.
Absolutely. I think, I feel like in another life, I would love to work at a distillery just because it's very different than the industry that I'm in. But I see the community and I see the family aspect of it. And I think with everyone working together so much, it's like you do become sort of a family. So that's really important, I think, to me in the industry. And even from big distilleries to small distilleries, even the big guys, like, there's still a certain element. Like you have the very iconic distillers like Freddie No and Jimmy Russell. You have these guys, but they carry with them a legacy of like family, even though they are such a massive corporate. I don't want to say corporation, but
entity. There's a lot going on. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of barrels. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and there was a question earlier. I don't see it in the chat, but someone was asking how many barrels you guys are putting out currently. Well, I guess maybe another question, because I know you said I have the stat here that back in 1885 they were releasing 380,000 gallons in a year. Do you happen to know like the numbers you guys are doing now, just out of curiosity?
Unfortunately, we are not doing 380,000 gallons.
I can imagine it's a different world now.
So you can take a few zeros off that, and that's about where we are this year. We are very much a craft distillery. We have one still. She is 750 gallons. Her name is Louisa. We're able to run 7 days a week, 2 shifts a day with 2 ferments going on every day. And then we source quite a bit as well. And we're in, I want to say 44, 46 states. Don't hold me to that. But we're
That's
making
awesome.
We're definitely pushing some stuff out.
Yeah, I've seen it when I've been home in the Carolinas just visiting. I saw someone in the comments saying they wish they would have grabbed a bottle when they were in North Carolina, which I know it's available there. So I see some folks talking about what they're drinking. Doug said he was drinking the Sour Mash, but he just moved to some Copper and Kings Brandy aged in High West Rye Cask. Oh, interesting.
That was a good one.
I love High West, so yeah, that sounds great. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to the Cask Finish series. And you guys, the distillery has been doing this for a while. But this bottle I have here, I don't know is this an upcoming release or is this a recently released? This is the white wine cask.
Yes, so this is one of our new ones. This is our reserve bourbon that we just tried, finished for an additional 17 months in our white wine cask. Sorry, man, I'm struggling today. Words are hard.
No worries.
But yeah, these are Sauternes barrels. So this is a sweet white wine. It is a blend of a few grapes, mainly Sauvignon Blanc and Muscatel. There's a couple others in there as well. It's out of a specific region out of Bordeaux, but absolutely delicious. So you're going to get those whiskey notes up front. But then that sweet wine finish is going to kind of round out some of the sharper edges, elongate your finish, and then make that breath out just a little bit softer and sweeter.
Yeah, my experience, I did a stream a while back where I was tasting through a lot of wines that are used often as finishes. And I had never had Sauternes until I did that. It shocked me by how sweet that wine is. So how do you approach the whiskey going into it? Like, do you look for drier, less sweet whiskeys to kind of use that as a way to sweeten it up, or do you look for more sweet whiskeys to complement it?
I'm more on the complement with the barrel finish. I'll take a whiskey that I find may have a hole or two in it, or a blank spot in the overall tasting pattern is what I'm talking about. And then I try to fill that with a barrel that I feel will fill in that gap. So let's say I have a whiskey that the mid palate is a little weak. I may bring in a red wine barrel, or I may bring in a rum barrel or something like that to kind of give it a little bit more umph and a little bit more fat. But really, I kind of look at the whiskey first. I kind of decide what it shines on and then what it needs. And then we try to fill in those gaps with the barrel.
Definitely. What I guess another question is, maybe we touched on this a little bit earlier, but when you're looking at how finishing casks work with things like brandy compared to things like whiskey, is there something that works better? Like I said, you talked a little bit about this earlier, so apologies if it's a repeat question. Is there something that you feel works better with whiskey than it does with brandy?
Yeah, so I like something a little more on the aggressive side with whiskey.
Okay.
Mainly because whiskey is a little more aggressive spirit. It's got a bigger backbone. It's
Mhm.
just a tighter, more abrupt spirit. So I want to make sure that the whiskey doesn't eat the barrel, and I want to make sure that the barrel doesn't eat the whiskey. So trying to find that balance on a whiskey that's strong enough to go for an elongated maturation time, and then a barrel that's also had something in it that's actually going to give some flavor and some umph as well. But really, it's all about balance, creativity, and then honestly just trying new things.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was gonna say this one to me, it's different than some of the other Sauterne casks I've had because I do feel like they're complementing each other. It doesn't feel like there's like a really strong, like sweet finish like sometimes you get on it, a Sauterne cask. It almost like it's full encompassing of the flavor from the start of the palate to the end of the palate. It's kind of really just like you said, amping up the whiskey, and I think this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it's 50% barrel, 50% whiskey, but they kind of balance and commingle so well. I find this one very clean. Um,
Hmm.
not a lot of stuff cloying on the back. It's there, it's there, and then it just kind of goes away, and it's very Moorish, so to speak. You definitely want another sip.
Yeah, I think that's what makes finishing bourbon different to me than finishing rye, because with rye, I feel like a lot of times the finishing cask takes on so much character from the cask, whereas bourbon, it's a little harder to find. Like if you gave me this, would I be able to tell you this is Sauternes cask? Probably not. But I think that's like just a mastery of the blending, like making sure that it doesn't feel like it's disproportionate there. So have you done
Exactly.
much finishing with rye at either Nelson's Greenbrier or just in general?
So we've definitely done a little bit of finishing with Nelson's Greenbrier with some rye. We just started a bottle your own series, which
Oh,
basically
nice.
allows my distillers to do all kinds of weird barrels and finishes. So if you ever find yourself in Tennessee or any of your fans, please swing by and say hello. We've got 3 barrels up at the moment, and that changes, probably once a month, I would say.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're putting through a little bit of spirit. But yeah, rye I find is a little bit trickier, mainly because it's a little bit more singular. It's a little bit more just like one edge. Like you got that rye
Sure.
spice, and then it's sharp and done. Where especially with that, because of the corn in a nice bourbon, it kind of gives a little bit more of that fat, so to speak. So it
Mhm.
allows it to ride kind of on top of it and kind of give you a fattier, deeper finish, so to speak.
Yep, absolutely. Agreed 100% there. Matthew said a possibly weird, I don't think that's a weird question. Do you have any close friends in the industry from other distilleries that you like to chat with and or bounce ideas off of? That's not a weird question.
Oh man, all the time. So we are a huge group of friends. So it's alcohol is one of those industries that yes, we are competing with each other. Yes, for the same clientele and all that stuff. But at the end of the festival or at the end of the day, or if we've got a problem or whatever, we are really all cut from the same cloth and absolutely just love chit chatting about what we do. And if I get excited when I see a distiller call me up because I know they've got a question or they want to go do something crazy or whatever it may be. But yeah, the community aspect in the alcohol business is wild. Everybody wants to be here, and it is one of the few businesses and industries that I've been around that I've noticed that. And it's what makes it's so special. So yeah, I don't have a problem calling up people from Vendome or calling up people from some of the other major distilleries in the state or across the country. High West being one of them as well. And just bouncing ideas off those guys. And I've never felt like I've gotten a cold shoulder or not had a fully open conversation.
I've heard that from, I will say, every single person in the industry I've talked to since I started this channel back in 2020 has said the same thing. It's not, yes, they're competitors, but at the same time, it's like, it's because of the passion I think we talked about earlier. It's like you all share a similar passion. You want to make the best whiskey for, your people. So it's like, why not share ideas? Why not, see like what's working for you, what's working for me? I think that's just part of making whiskey better for everyone.
Exactly. And it goes back to that collaboration thing. I like working with people that I just enjoy as a person, as just in general. And I like working with a company that has the same goals in mind that my company does. And when you find those people, yeah, you should latch onto them because that just makes the day go by so much faster.
Definitely. I see some people in the chat talking about the cask releases. Travis says some of the Nelson's Cask releases that they are putting out are wild. Drinking a pour of rum Cask tonight. Nice. Tony says that his local store has a few bottles of the Madeira Cask bourbon left. It's in my cart. So you got some sales tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. And then Adam says, I'll pretty much grab any Sauternes finish aged whiskey, regardless of producer, and have rarely been disappointed. Yeah. Like I said, I'm a similar, like every time I have Sauternes Cask, I'm like, it just works so well. So I saw white wine. And I was like, oh, white wine. Like I was thinking more like a Chardonnay. I'm like, Chardonnay finish? That's weird. And I'm like, oh, Sauternes. Okay, that makes more sense. Awesome. Well, can you tease like any other future like Cask series coming soon that you're excited about? Just maybe something in the works.
Oh man, you're kind of really putting me on the spot on that one. So
you don't have to answer. You don't have to answer. If you had some favorites from the past, you can share that as well.
The Madeira one that just got brought up was absolutely fantastic. I'm drinking a lot of the cognac finish as well. And then our annual honey release, I mean, that's kind of what we've known for. This year, although we didn't quite have as many cases as what we hoped, is an absolute banger of a year. It is delicious. One of my favorites in quite some time. And then again, we're going back to that bottle your own station. The distilling team has gotten absolutely wild. We're doing straight corn whiskeys there. We've got an orange wine barrel that's sitting up as well. We've done we are doing some smoked tobacco barrels, all kinds of crazy stuff. So please keep us in mind. Watch us on social media. And like I say, if you ever find yourself in Nashville, please come by and say hello.
Well, will any of us not in the Nashville area get a chance to try some of those crazy things? Probably not, right? It's very small operation.
Relatively small.
Okay.
But, times are changing as far as DTC and things on that nature. So we are, don't rule us out. We're definitely finding new and innovative ways to sell our whiskey across the world these days. So, the world of social media has kind of really changed things and allowed us to have a much bigger platform. And we're really trying to take full advantage of that.
Yeah, by the way, if you guys aren't following them on Instagram, it's just Nelson's Green Brier. They shared the story earlier today. So if you go to my Instagram at Bourbon Bytes, you can just click on my story and click on them, follow them. They're always posting. I love an active, I don't know if it's a social media manager or a social media team, but I love seeing that because I think those of us, at least on the West Coast, who don't get to experience that daily life of what's going on at the distillery, we kind of live vicariously through what's being posted on social media. And I just always see like fun stuff happening there.
It's so much fun to watch. I get up every day and flip through and like to see the little posts and the photography and the videography. It's absolutely amazing. That whole profession is super wild. And then, there's so much competition out there and, everybody's memory is so short. So if you're not constantly, refreshing and kind of showcasing what you got and what you can do, it's easy to get forgotten about.
Definitely. Okay, well, we got one more pour to get to tonight. First, I want to highlight this comment from Taco Beast. They say Nelson's Brother Whiskey is great. The prices are great too. Yeah, do we just like rough prices for each of these that we've tasted so far? I know it's different per market. It depends, but do you have like a range that you think like the Tennessee whiskey, the reserve bourbon, and the white wine or the Cask Finish series usually go for?
Yes,
if not, I can look it up.
Again, don't hold me to this because it definitely goes all over the place. But you're kind of in the lower to mid 30s for the Tennessee whiskey. You're kind of in that mid 50, low 60s region for the reserve bourbon and our bourbons. And then you're kind of right at that $100 mark for our finishes. We really want to make a quality whiskey, but at a price point to where you can sit down and drink it. I want you to enjoy the things that we are creating because we are so proud of them. And there's nothing worse than like making something super cool and then putting it in a bottle and just watching everybody go, oh, it costs too much. And we're going to buy it, but we're not going to drink it. It's just going to sit there. And then that's not what whiskey was made. That's not what booze was made for. It was made to be enjoyed and celebrated and to, shared. So that's kind of our whole pricing point strategy is, yes, we are a very craft distillery. There is a team of 4 of us that are actually on the production side of things at the distillery, and really 3 if I'm being honest. But we also want to just like be approachable. And again, we just like talking about whiskey and we like drinking whiskey and we like sharing our story. So that's kind of where we are in our pricing point.
By the way, you nailed those prices. I pulled them up while you were talking.
Oh,
You
good.
got it. You're perfect. Yeah, you
I
can.
was
If you
nervous
guys are,
about that one.
if you guys are curious, you can go to their website. I'll put it in the chat here. Go to their website, check out their store. You can buy. I think this link will work. If not, one of my mods helped me make that a clickable link. But yeah, they have all the details there about the different cask series, the different spirits they have. But there's one more pour we're getting to tonight that I didn't expect, but I'm very, very curious about. It seems to be a very well received product from Nelson's Greenbrier. This is your cream liqueur. It is a chocolate hazelnut pecan liqueur. Tell us about this.
So this is actually my baby. So she just now came out. We're really, really happy about this one. The idea was to basically create Southern comfort in a bottle. I wanted very easy, recognizable flavors that go together well and remind you of just simpler, smoother times. This is that AM alcoholic beverage, put the cream in your coffee kind of deal. I had some in mine this morning. It was
nice,
delicious. And it's just an easy drinker. There's no sharp punches in this. There's no hidden flavors. It's just a good cream liqueur spiked with good Tennessee whiskey.
Awesome. Yeah, I just poured myself over ice, just a little bit, just to kind of get it. To me, it's more of like, I usually do this like as like a final like dessert pour. Like if I'm skipping dessert, I'm just gonna have a nice pour of something like very sweet. So that's like my go-to. I've not tried this before, but that flavor combination, chocolate, hazelnut, pecan, or pecan. Do you say pecan or pecan?
I say pecan.
Pecan, okay. I think it's just like the deep South. I just grew up saying pecan, and everyone makes fun of me for it. But sorry.
Nope, there's that dividing line. I think you get Tennessee, Georgia, you start hearing pecan, and Kentucky, it's usually pecan. But that is one of those words that definitely changes based on where you grew up.
For sure, I will say there's definitely a nuttiness on this. That it's not just super sweet at least on the nose. I've not tasted it yet, but there's a bit of like, I mean, that hazelnut is really, really shining through. Was what, like you said, what better, let me try to phrase that better. Was there a specific reason you went with these flavors, the chocolate, hazelnut, and pecan?
They really just kind of reminded me of my childhood. It kind of gave me the vibe of like early, raising it for Thanksgiving and going to my grandparents' house and there being like 50 or 60 of us and there'd be some sort of like eggnog cocktail and a few other like batch cocktails out. And it was just kind of that vibe. And I just really wanted something that was not something hard to think about, just like poured it at the end of the evening or the start of your day, or like just kind of get you in the mood when you don't quite want to drink, but maybe just a little bit. Just easy going, like just simple. And chocolate, hazelnut, and pecan, man, those are just a classic combination.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is about that flavor combo, but when you were speaking about like family gathering, Thanksgiving, it's kind of like, it reminds me, I don't want to say like a candle, but like it's kind of like it puts you in the spirit. Like sometimes when we burn certain candles, my partner is a huge candle lover, so we always have candles going in the house. There's certain smells that just bring you back to like Thanksgiving and like holidays with your family. I feel like this is doing the same thing to me. It's like not that we had this specific thing at our family, but it's like puts you in that holiday mood. And what a great time to have something like this. Is this available now? I know on the website it says coming soon, but I'm just curious.
So we just now bottled it. I think it's going to be at the distillery and in 8 states. And then we're kind of really testing the market, and I'm hoping to push this really worldwide. I think this is really going to take off and kind of be a huge marking point for Nelson's Greenbrier. Again, it's just an easy drinker. So if you can't find it quite in your market just yet, please ask for it. Go to the Nelson's Greenbrier website. We're going to do some DTC stuff as well with this, so that might be a good opportunity to get some. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity with this one. It's a good liqueur. It's just, again, just not hard to think about, just easy drinking.
And it's different. It's different than, a lot of people are just doing the bourbon cream, which is a very, standard thing that we see a lot of distilleries do. But like this flavor profile, it's something that I haven't seen before, at least available, at least where I'm at. And I think this is a bottle that I'm going to definitely have on the shelves during the holidays. It's just, awesome. Like you said, approachable. Everyone in the family can love this, even if they're not a Tennessee whiskey drinker.
Yep.
Well, we do have a few more minutes here. Just if you guys have any last minute questions you want to ask, I have a couple more as well. Like, I know it's so hard to get everything in an hour, but I want to like use the time as much as I can. Because I just love talking to you and get you to know the story. I'll ask a question from Adam in the chat. Adam says he just saw is it Tokai Cask
Yes.
in a pic on the Instagram story. What was the experience like using those barrels? Seems like first refill versus later fill are always challenging with over finishing happening fast.
So when it comes to that, the more times you use the barrel, the wilder it gets, and it takes more of a left or a right turn. These barrels turned into just absolutely delicious finishers. It's one of my favorite ones that have been up recently. We are really, really happy with this one. So if you get the opportunity to grab one of those, you for sure need to.
Awesome. Now I want to go back to a comment that was early in the stream, and I saw it and I wanted to ask it, but I was going to wait till the end. Let me find it. I know. Hold on. And it's going to take me a minute to find it, but, oh no, I thought I saw it. Sorry. Hold on. Anyways, okay. Well, while I look for that one, let me ask you a question of my own. Where do you see Nelson's Greenbrier being in about 5 years? Like, what do you hope the distillery will become in that time?
So I think we've got nowhere to go but up. I think, we've always been known for some of our finishes, especially locally, but we've got big dreams. We've got big aspirations. I think you're going to see the Tennessee whiskey on a lot more back bars across the country. I think we're going to become more of a household name. And then, like I said, I really got high hopes for this liqueur. I'm hoping you're going to see me in some commercial somewhere, selling Nelson's Greenbrier liqueur in between the shows on the Super Bowl or something like that in 5 years.
Wow. I love a big dream. That's awesome.
Big dreams.
Okay, I found the comment. Thank you for filling the time. It's from Josh Fritz. He says, "How big is the buck on the wall behind you?" I've been admiring your background. Yeah, like show us tell us about the background, like what's going on up there.
Yeah, we're pretty eclectic here. So you've got a Bob Weir poster with the skeleton on the buffalo. That is a fish poster with all the corn. That is a deer I shot off my farm 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
He will score in the mid 150s. And then I just actually, now that we're on the topic, just arrowed another one a few days ago that's a little bit bigger than that. But yeah, I like music and I like the outdoors. And then I'm a really big bow hunter.
Wow. That definitely sounds like you're Kentucky born and raised.
Yes, for sure. Yes.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, I don't have anything else here on my end, but thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? Are you on like Instagram and stuff? Do you want people to follow you, or do you want them to follow the distillery?
Nope. So please follow the distillery. And then I am, my handle is kygrapes@gmail.com is my email. And then just kygrapes on Instagram. And then Brandon O'Daniel on Facebook.
Awesome. It sounds like you've had that name for a while based on your background.
Just a little bit, yes.
That's awesome. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing this incredible whiskey with me. I'm so excited to see more of it. I know every time I go back home to the Carolinas, I see it all over the shelves, but it's good to know that I can buy it online as well on the website here. Like I said, thank you guys for dropping the link in the chat. If you guys have any more questions, he just dropped his email address if you guys want to reach out to him directly, or if you want to send me a message, I'm happy to reach out. And if there's a lot of questions, we can bring him back on for another stream in the future. Hopefully, we'll see.
I would love it.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, have a great rest of your night. Thank you again for taking time out of your day to do this. And cheers to you.
Cheers. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you all so much.
All right. Bye.
Have a good one.